Willow left the warmth of the farm at dawn, the memory of soft hay and friendly cats still fresh in his mind. Though part of him longed to stay in that safe haven, the promise of adventure tugged at his heart. His coat, once scraggly, now shimmered with health gained from farm life. Muscles that had formed chasing mice and climbing fences gave him a confident stride along a narrowing dirt path. Before midday, the sun disappeared behind an imposing canopy of twisted branches. This was the twilight forest, a place where dusk seemed endless. A damp chill crept through the undergrowth, and the rustling of leaves warned that hidden eyes might be watching. Willow paused at the threshold, tail flicking nervously. Yet he pressed on, recalling past lessons. Rely on your senses, evaluate risks, trust your instincts. Each step carried him deeper into the gloom. Even without direct sunlight, spots of bioluminescent fungus flickered around logs, creating a surreal glow. It was unlike anywhere he had ever been, both enchanting and unsettling, stirring a mixture of excitement and apprehension in his chest. The deeper Willow ventured, the thicker the foliage became, blocking any remaining hint of sky. The air was damp, carrying scents of moss and wet bark. Paws sinking into spongy earth, he carefully maneuvered around tangled roots. Occasionally, he heard distant hooting, the telltale call of owls that roosted here even before nightfall. Aware these birds could be formidable hunters, he kept close to the tree trunks, trying to blend into the shadows. His improved agility from farm life proved useful, leaping effortlessly over fallen branches, weaving between gnarled vines, and testing each step before committing. Hunger rumbled in his belly, reminding him that food would be scarce in such a dark realm. He scoured the forest floor for signs of insects or small critters, ready to use the stalking skills he'd honed at the barn. But the forest silence was eerie. It felt as if every creature was holding its breath, waiting for some unknown threat to pass by. Willow's whiskers twitched with tension, but he swallowed hard and pushed forward, determined to conquer this new land's mysteries. A sudden movement overhead made Willow freeze, heart thumping. Through the dim light, he glimpsed broad, silent wings drifting between the treetops. An owl, gliding like a phantom. He pressed himself low, ears flattened, recalling how easily an owl might snatch a small creature. Not wanting to be spotted, Willow inched behind a mossy stump, barely daring to breathe. In the hush, the owl swooped closer, scanning for unsuspecting prey. Willow's nerves prickled. He reminded himself not to panic. He had outsmarted bigger threats before, from territorial strays to prowling city dogs. After several tense moments, the owl drifted away, satisfied there was no easy catch. Only then did Willow exhale. Once his breathing steadied, a wave of relief washed over him. Yet that close encounter also stirred a spark of determination. No matter how imposing this forest was, he refused to succumb to fear. He would learn its rhythms as he had learned the market's bustle or the farm's patrols. Encouraged by that thought, he resumed walking, carefully stepping over thick roots, senses on full alert for the next challenge. His bravery grew with every stride. Gone was the timid kitten from the alley days. Now, Willow relied on strategy and self-confidence, scanning each hollow log before peeking inside for possible prey. Occasionally, he caught sight of mice scurrying between clumps of ferns, and his tail flicked in anticipation. After a few failed attempts at a stealthy approach, he managed to pounce on a small rodent, providing much-needed nourishment. As dusk blurred seamlessly into deeper darkness, Willow noticed faint moonlight filtering through a sparse gap in the canopy. Even that limited glow was enough to reveal hidden trails among the underbrush. He paused to take stock of his surroundings, feeling a sense of autonomy. He was no longer entirely dependent on others. His instincts had sharpened to guide him. While the memory of the warm farm comforted him, he accepted that survival here meant trusting his own judgment. If he fell into danger, there might be no kind dog or friendly barn cat around. This was Willow's test, to prove he could stand on his own four paws. A soft noise drew Willow's attention, a tiny squeak that sounded more plaintive than fearful. Investigating, he discovered a small nest nestled in the dense foliage. Inside, a young quail lay trembling, likely separated from its mother. Willow recognized that vulnerable feeling, being alone and afraid in a hostile environment. His own recollection of being abandoned tugged at him, and compassion replaced any predatory instinct. Instead of viewing the bird as possible prey, he saw a fellow creature in need. Carefully, he nudged aside the leaves, verifying no predator lurked nearby. The quail looked up with wide, frightened eyes, too young to fly. Normally, cats might ignore or chase such a thing. But Willow remembered how strangers helped him in the city when he was desperate. Now it was his turn to offer kindness. He stood guard beside the quail, scanning the murky forest for signs of danger. For a while, he considered carrying it to a safer spot, though he wasn't sure where that might be. Still, his willingness to help showed how far he'd come, evolving from timid kitten to a protector of the less fortunate. While Willow watched over the quail, a flash of red fur appeared at the edge of his vision. A sleek fox, nose to the ground, sniffing for an easy meal. A surge of adrenaline coursed through Willow. He instantly recalled the tension of the city streets when he encountered aggressive strays, but this fox could be even more dangerous. Determined not to let it harm the quail, Willow crouched low, ears pinned back, and hissed a warning. The fox paused, ears perked, clearly intrigued. It locked eyes with Willow, assessing whether to fight for the potential prey. Willow's tail lashed, every hair bristling with defiance. He was smaller, but he refused to back down. A growl rumbled in the fox's throat, and for a moment, Willow feared the worst. Yet his heart told him he had no choice. He couldn't abandon the quail. Summoning courage, he let out a louder hiss, baring his teeth. The fox, perhaps sensing Willow's fierce resolve, decided the effort wasn't worth the risk. With a final glare, it slunk away into the shadows, leaving Willow trembling but victorious. After the fox disappeared, Willow's legs felt shaky. His heartbeat thundered, and it took a moment to calm down. Yet a sense of triumph replaced the terror. He had just fended off a predator through sheer bravery. Turning back to the quail, he gently nudged it, checking for injuries. Though still frightened, the little bird appeared unharmed. Relieved, Willow mewed softly, urging it to remain quiet in the leaves. He kept watch for a while longer, scanning the darkness for any sign of the fox's return. Eventually, he caught faint rustling deeper in the forest, perhaps the sound of the quail's mother or another adult bird. Encouraged, Willow took a calculated risk. He carefully guided the young quail toward the faint calls, ensuring it didn't wander into thick brambles. When he was confident the bird had a better chance of reuniting with its family, he slipped away, continuing his journey. Though he could have lingered, he felt an internal push to move on, spurred by a stubborn determination that he was made for greater challenges than a single clearing in the forest. Night pressed in, and Willow found himself navigating deeper shadows, where even moonlight barely penetrated. Gnarled roots twisted across every path, threatening to trip him. An owl's distant call sent echoes that bounced through the trees, a chilling reminder of the dangers above. Yet Willow's experiences had honed not just his body but also his mind. He tested each branch before leaping, paused at every clearing to listen for predators, and carried himself with a mixture of caution and pride. Despite his newly fortified confidence, traces of stubbornness emerged. Once, he spotted movement in the bushes, a pair of glowing eyes. Instead of sneaking away, Willow held his ground, certain he could handle whatever lurked there. Turned out, it was merely a curious raccoon, sniffing for food. They briefly locked gazes, each assessing the other's intent, before the raccoon waddled off. Willow's tail flicked in self-satisfaction. Perhaps he was taking more risks than necessary, but he couldn't ignore the blossoming self-assurance that came from surviving one peril after another. He was no longer the frightened kitten scrounging scraps. He was forging his own path. At last, Willow reached a cluster of towering pines where moonbeams filtered through a small break in the canopy. The glow revealed a smooth patch of moss, an ideal resting spot after hours of tense exploration. Exhaling slowly, he curled up on the soft surface. Tiny insects buzzed around, drawn to the faint shimmer of fungus in the bark. His body felt weary, but his spirit brimmed with the thrill of independence. He remembered the farmland's comforting barn, the gentle camaraderie of the other cats, and how easily he could have stayed. Instead, he'd chosen this uncertain wilderness. He wondered if others from the farm would ever embark on such a risky journey. The thought made him a bit proud. Maybe it took a special kind of courage to seek out danger for the sake of growth. At the same time, He recalled each land he'd traveled. The city alley, the bustling riverside, the tranquil farm. Each place had sharpened his senses and shaped his character. Now this twilight forest tested him in new ways, forging an inner resilience that couldn't be gained from comfort alone. As dawn's first glimmer tried to pierce the thick canopy, Willow stretched, muscles sore yet stronger than ever. His fur, once matted and dull, now gleamed softly even in the half-light, evidence of good nourishment and steady exercise. Stepping away from his mossy bed, he eyed the forest trail ahead, winding, mysterious, and still fraught with hidden threats. And yet he felt ready. He'd guarded a helpless creature, faced down a fox, and learned to rely on instincts born from past struggles. This land had given him a new trait, unwavering courage in the face of the unknown. Just as the city taught him adaptability and the farm taught him community, the twilight forest endowed him with a deeper sense of self-reliance. His appearance now reflected his inner transformation, a sleeker, more solid figure, carrying faint scars of adventure that felt like badges of honor. With a final glance around the darkly beautiful realm, he moved onward, determined to see what lay beyond the shadowy tree line. One paw in front of the other, heart aflame with possibility, Willow stepped confidently into the next chapter of his journey.